Welcome to this Saturday, August the 8th edition of The Truth, coming to you from West Palm Beach, Florida, just across the Intercoastal Waterway from Mar-a-Lago. We've got a wonderful show planned for you today, brought to you by Bogey's Beef and Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. We had a very spirited interview with Tina Peters earlier this week. She's going to be up in the next segment. I was troubled by the interview, frankly. I found her to be confrontational, not forthcoming about her story. She seemed to want to be portrayed in only a favorable light and accept no responsibility for anything that she did that may have been wrong or questionable. The fact of the matter is, I was really looking forward to the interview because I really admire what this lady has done for our country, the sacrifices she made for our country. You know, she tried to, well, she did. She got somebody to go in and make a copy of the hard drive on the voting machine in Colorado, in Grand Junction, Colorado, actually Mesa County, I believe. And this was after the election was over. She wasn't trying in any way to change the outcome of the election. She was trying to determine whether the vote tallies were legitimate. And the mainstream media says, oh, she was trying to overturn the election. Well, how can you overturn an election that's already been certified? What she was trying to do was expose fraud, if it existed, and reveal it to the American people so that we could stop it from happening again. I celebrate that. What I don't celebrate is her defensiveness, her unwillingness to talk about what I think are unseemly things she did, but I'm not even sure they were unlawful. And she felt like I was attacking her, or at least that's the impression she gave me and producer Anthony. And I really was pretty miffed by the time that interview was done. I'll just be honest with you. But I'm not going to let that cloud my judgment that I do think she is a patriot. I do think that she was acting with the right motives. I don't think that if she broke any laws, they were material or certainly did not warrant the kind of punishment she got. She was sentenced to 9 years in the federal penitentiary. She served 2, and she'd be there right now rotting away had President Trump not exerted so much pressure on the governor of Colorado that he commuted her sentence and released her. So I think you'll want to stay tuned for that interview. It was fiery, fair warning. You know, when it's over, all said and done with, I'd like to know what you think. Email me at johngordontruth@gmail.com. And tell me what you think. I'd really like to know. And while we're doing housekeeping, if you're watching us on Rumble, Getter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, X, please consider liking the broadcast and subscribe, if you will. We are really gaining subscribers every single day. Not as fast as we would like, but we're up to almost 40,000 just on Facebook. YouTube continues to be a challenge. I don't know whether we haven't figured out how to do business with them or whether they're punishing us, but we've been on there for 4 years and we're all the way up to 2,000 subscribers. Now, just so you know, it does not cost to subscribe. And if you really want to make the people at YouTube mad, just go to John Gordon Truth on YouTube Live and subscribe to our channel, hit the like button and the notifications button, and you'll always know when we put up a new post, and you can come check it out. Similarly, you can watch on Getter and Rumble and Facebook. So be sure to come over to John Gordon Truth to our site. If you're on the John Frederick site or cdm.press, who also carries our feed, we would welcome you to come over and join our site directly. It would, and the reason I say that, I am so grateful to John Fredericks and to cdm.press, our broadcasting partners, for carrying our feed. but you can watch it wherever you want to. But I really would like you to subscribe to our site, because that only increases our numbers, and that's how we can get better guests and provide you better content. So please do us that small favor if you would. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and you can do it in less time than I've talked about it. So thank you for your consideration on that. Tina Peters is going to come up in the second half hour, and then we've got Paul Renner. He is a candidate for governor in Florida. He is a Republican candidate in the primary, running against Byron Donalds. And this young guy, what's his name? Fishback. He's a millennial and seemingly come out of nowhere, and he's really getting a lot of steam. And then the current lieutenant governor is also on the ballot. President Trump has endorsed Byron Donalds. DeSantis, interestingly, has as yet not endorsed anyone. So as put off as I was by Tina Peters and her unwillingness to be genuine and transparent with us and tell her story, I was really miffed. All right, I've said it for the third time, I'll stop. But as put off as I was by her, I was really drawn to Paul Renner. He's smart. He was educated at Davidson College. Then he went to the University of Florida Law School. He has been the Speaker of the Florida House of Representatives. Oh yeah, he's also a veteran. He served in the armed services for, I think, 20 years, and also has worked as a prosecutor. He's just a really impressive guy. So if you're in Florida and you want to know who to vote for governor, watch the interview. Maybe you like Paul Renner as I did. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're a Byron Donalds fan. I'm not feeling it. And why Trump endorsed Donalds so early, I really don't understand it. You know, he's got a story, mostly good. He grew up in poverty in New York and not Queens, but Brooklyn. Thanks, Anthony. But look, he's got a checkered past as a teenager. He dealt drugs. He sold some cocaine to teenagers. That's not cool. But hey, you know, Americans, we believe in redemption, and he's been apologetic. The problem I have with Byron Donalds is he just doesn't have a CV, a resume. He just hadn't done anything beyond serve in Congress and in public office. And I just don't think he's up to the job to run a $1.3 trillion economy, which is the size of Florida's economy. And it's not like, you know, there's some states, like you can go out west and they've got a good economy. South Dakota, for instance, they've got more millionaires live in South Dakota than any other state in the nation, I believe, or maybe it's third only to New York and California. I think I'm close on that. That used to be true. I don't know where it is today, matter of factly. But the fact is, it's mainly agricultural based. And so, you know, not to marginalize that at all, but that's one industry. And you can manage pretty effectively a state where you have one primary industry that drives the economy. In Florida, not only do you have agriculture, but you've got real estate development that is on fire. On fire from Jacksonville to Orlando to Tampa to Clearwater to Miami and West Palm Beach, where we're sitting right now. I mean, it's unbelievable how much investment is coming into this state and how many people are moving here. And then you've also got Disney. So Orlando is a great tourist destination, as is Miami. Miami's a very international city. You've got people coming from all over the world to visit Miami right now. They come in the summer when it's hot as Hades. I don't really understand it. But people from France, from South America, from Brazil. My wife and I were having dinner the other night, and there was a couple there from South America that had come up to Miami for a week, in part to watch the World Cup. But nevertheless, they were also motivated because they like Miami, where they just happen to have a condo. And so Miami is a vibrant, very fast-moving city. And then you've got Space Coast, where Elon Musk and NASA reside, just a couple of hours north of here. And so there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of complicated, hey, be quiet, Aura. My dang grok. She's listening when I'm not even talking to her. Let me kindly ask her to be quiet. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, it's a complex environment, a complex state with a lot of moving parts. And it's a big state, a heavily populated state. So my conclusion is I don't think Byron Donalds is up to the challenge. I do like this guy. I also am anxious to learn more about Fishback, and I'm learning more about the current lieutenant governor who's also in that race. We'll see how it shakes out. And at some point, I'll tell you who I'm going to vote for. And if you're in Florida, you can write to me at johngordontruth@gmail.com and tell me you don't care who I vote for and just to mind my own business. Or you can write me, johngordontruth@gmail.com, and ask me what I think about a given topic or issue, or tell me what you think. I read every email and try and respond. I think I respond to most people, if even it's a thumbs up. All right. A lot of stuff going on in the news this week. One of the things that I'm focused on is our U.S. economy. Folks, we're witnessing a melt up. Now, for the 100th time, 30th time, 15th time, I'm not sure how many, Trump says we're close to a settlement with Iran. With that announcement, the price of oil plummeted. We've gone from over $100 a barrel back down now to the low 70s. If we get that agreement, it's going to plummet even more. But do you remember that I have been telling you that I did not understand why Americans are paying more at the pump for gas when we don't buy a single drop of fuel or oil from Iran? So why, and we're energy independent. All of our petroleum comes from inside the U.S. So why would that cause American oil companies to raise the price of gasoline? Well, they released their earnings this week, and their earnings were up gargantuan. So much so that Trump said it was too much. Exxon and Mobil and the petroleum companies, he said, are making too much money at the expense of the American people. So, gentlemen, if you're the CEO of one of those companies, I really encourage you to think about your pricing strategy, because Trump is watching you, and things are going to get awfully dicey if you don't get your house in order and give us Americans the price relief that we deserve. None of our oil comes from Iran. And U.S. gas prices should not be going up, because all of our oil and production and refinement is inside our 50 states. So get real. Stop punishing the American people because you think you can blame it on the war in Iran, for which you have no consequence. So Trump sees it, and I've been saying it for several weeks, if not months, and we're seeing those chickens now coming home to roost. Well, if you watch the mainstream media, all you hear about is socialism and communism. Everybody's talking about this candidate and that candidate and Mandami and this guy, what is it? Where is his name? Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan. He is a Democratic nominee, and he's an avowed communist. God help us. But I've felt for the last 10 years that we give AOC and the squad and Bernie Sanders way too much oxygen. We fan their flames way too much. Why don't we just basically ignore them? Why are we continually keeping them in the news? Well, we keep them in the news because they make people mad. And evidently, that's the way to get people to watch your program. Well, I've never sat here and tried to make anybody mad. I may have made them mad, but it wasn't because I was trying to be mean or push their buttons. I just, call them out on their stories when I don't think they're telling the truth. But aside from that, we're really giving people like Abdul El-Sayed way too much attention. He is running for the United States Senate, and he is running from a swing state, that would be Michigan, and he did win the Democratic nomination. And I actually am celebrating. I am celebrating because, like Trump said, Republicans do real well on ballots when they're running against a communist. Here's President Trump.
But in Congress, we're working every day to defend the American dream for you and your children, the radical left, the maniacs that are trying to destroy it with the disaster known as not socialism, communism. It's communism. These are communists. And the polls were wrong again last night when they thought it would be a landslide victory for a hater of Jews and a hater of Israel. This guy hates Jews. Somebody said, oh, that's a little strong. No, he hates Jews and he hates Israel. Abdul El-Sayed. Can you believe this? This could only happen to me. Abdul El-Sayed, lovely gentleman. He's a man of hate. And now he's going around saying, no, I love everybody. He doesn't love everybody. Put him in office. You're going to find out what he loves. He doesn't love Israel. He doesn't love Jewish people. He hates them. He hates them with a passion that burns in his heart, and there's not a frickin' thing he can do about it. There's not a thing he can do about it because he hates them. But the socialist candidate ran up big margins against the communist candidate in Detroit, and I was saying that probably it's corrupt. It's probably corrupt. I don't know who the hell they wanted. I couldn't care less. We do better. Actually, we do better against the communists, according to every poll. The poll says we do better against the communists. So he won, and so I think I'm happy. I put out a statement. Congratulations to the Republican Party. The communists want to take their ruinous and deadly ideology of misery and squalor to every state in America, but we're not going to let them.
Well, so it's just mind-boggling to me that we're sitting here even talking about this. We're actually defending against an avowed communist who's running for a pretty important office, and we're having to run a Republican against him. I mean, that's really scary. President Trump expresses his frustration in this same context, actually, with the mainstream media. He published on Truth Social just yesterday. He said, I was 28-1 this week on endorsements, and numerous of them were outliers. But if you studied the fake news, you would think that it was just the opposite, 1 for 28. All they talk about was the one, Abdul El-Sayed, I guess. Is that it? What is the one, Anthony? And that's why they call it fake news. That he had an endorsement that did not win. But anyway, he endorsed somebody and had 29 endorsements, and 28 of them won. That's pretty staggering. I wish I had won when Trump endorsed me when I was running for Attorney General. We just got in way too late. But anyway, I was honored to have done that, and wish we could have won, I should say. But anyway, the mainstream media does not tell the truth. And Trump calls them fake news. I just call them liars. I just go right to the mat, just right to the crux of the matter. They just lie, kind of like Anthony Fauci lied, and the media lies to support the liar. Trump did say rather humorously that he and El-Sayed do have one thing in common. Abdul Rahman, he just goes by Abdul. I can't pronounce his name. Abdul Rahman Mohammed El-Sayed wants to terminate the filibuster. and so do I. At least we have something in common. President Donald J. Trump. Well, this is something that I disagree with the president on. We had a majority leader who was a Democrat 15 years ago from Las Vegas. He wanted to do away with the filibuster. I'm telling you, the filibuster is an institutional process that has existed since the beginning of time, and it's intentional. The conventional wisdom is that the forefathers made it very difficult for Congress or the president to get anything done. And it was done intentionally because you would have that tension there so that bias and party loyalty would have to compete with the legitimacy and the merits of a proposed piece of legislation, like the SAVE Act. Now, I wish we didn't have the filibuster when we're talking about the SAVE Act, because that's what I want. But if it was something the Dems want, then I'd probably want the filibuster. So it cuts both ways. I'm not in favor of getting rid of the filibuster. If through playing with the rules we can get the SAVE Act attached to part of a reconciliation bill, then while I don't like it, I could stomach it. But we need to pass the SAVE Act. And if you want to help, and this is one thing Tina Peters and I did, and the fact of the matter is we agreed on everything. I just didn't like the fact that she lacked transparency and she wouldn't talk about the unseemliness of the things that happened after the election and things that she did. She thought I was blaming her or attacking her. I wasn't. I was just getting her to tell the story, but she wouldn't tell the story. Anyway, why am I going back to that again? Because I don't want to monkey with the system. And what's good for us today may be horrible for us tomorrow. So I think that is a very short-term bad strategy. So I don't support that. And the other thing that really amazes me is that there's so many people that are overtly showing their anti-Semitism towards Jews. We had an unwritten rule in this country virtually my entire life until just a year or two ago, really, that you just did not slander or say disparaging things about members of the Jewish faith. I think, in my mind, it was they've suffered enough. And they suffered through gas chambers in Germany and the Holocaust and Adolf Hitler. And so we consciously, intentionally decided to support Jews, both in this country and somewhere along the line in the late 40s and 50s by recognizing the state of Israel as a homeland for Jews. I think it's gotten distorted. I really don't like the meanness in attacks on Jews that you see on college campuses. And I don't like the distortions of the truth. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I really don't know what took place in Gaza and is taking place. You get so much conflicting information, and it really depends on who you talk to. We had a Jew on the show a month ago, and she and I got into an arm wrestling match over whether Israel had committed genocide in Gaza. I'm open to the possibility that they have, but she was adamant that they have not, and that is a fiction perpetuated by the liberal leftists and the people who really do hate Jewish people and who do hate Israel and who are painting a very untrue narrative. And then I had someone on the show in the last couple of weeks who said, John, you keep saying that the media is 85% controlled by the Jews. How can you think that this narrative about genocide in Gaza could be perpetuated given the fact that Jews control the media in this country? So it does leave me in a state of confusion, frankly. I don't know what you think. I'd like to know whether you're confused about it or not. Here's where I am. I am not confused about wanting our country to continue a strategic and friendly relationship with Israel. Period. Hard stop. Now, having said that, I do not want Netanyahu and Israel to be influencing our youth in this country through social media or other tactics that they could spread propaganda. No more than I would want China to do that or Russia. Pick the adversary. Fight your fight, but don't come into our country and fight it in the court of public opinion. That's the job of our policymakers. That's the job of Republicans and Democrats. President Trump can make the case for why we're spending $30 billion to support Israel militarily and through arms. Now, the lady that we had on the show said that's not a fair number, because really what we're doing is selling armaments to Israel. So they're really buying our weapons. I just don't know. I don't know where the truth lies. And we'll continue to watch it and study it and do a deep dive on it. But let's face it, it is part of our national conversation today. And I wish I had greater clarity around it. I've spent a lot of time trying to get clarity, but it's kind of like a shill game. And who do you believe? We see that played out on national television with John Fetterman and Jon Stewart. Let's roll the tape. Watch this.
You're literally saying we can all have discussions, except when it comes to Israel, which is not America. It seems like a weird line to draw.
Well, I don't think that's weird. I think what history demonstrates is that when people or a government or people turn their back to the Jewish community, things end really badly, and it's a dangerous.
Jewish community and Israel are not the same thing, brother man. They're not. That is not the same thing.
No. It's like, hey, it's like if I have to pick a side for after 10/7 and after Iran, I'm always going to stand with Israel. I'm always going to vote and support whatever that's necessary to protect themselves and to prosecute Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran too. And the very left never said a peep after Iran executed 30 to 40,000 young people in there just for protesting for democracy.
Bingo. For a Democrat, I really like Fetterman. So I'm in the middle between those two competing points of view, and I'm not trying to be wishy-washy. It's just that I think that we can have our cake and eat it too. Where I find myself is where I think Tucker finds himself, but man, he has just been ridiculed and misrepresented, I think. My point is, I want to support Israel. I want us to continue to support Israel. I want it to be balanced. And most of all, I don't want Israel working inside the borders of our country. I just don't. I think Mossad is here. I think they have worked inside our country with the CIA. The fact is, I trust neither of those institutions. I trust the good parts of the CIA and Mossad. I distrust and vehemently oppose and dislike, I hate the bad part of those organizations because they both kill people. And I'm not down with that. Now, when Trump killed that Iranian guy that car bombed all of our servicemen and women, you can't have any sympathy for the guy. But I just don't know whether that was the right way to have handled it. I would have so much preferred to have plucked him out of Iran like we plucked out the head of Venezuela and brought him before a military court or some court, either in our country or an international court, whatever. But I believe in law. I believe in due process. And I don't believe in killing people. Except under the most extreme circumstances where they pose an imminent threat that cannot be otherwise arrested. And that's my problem with the CIA. The ex-CIA officer who we had on our show, John, what's his name, Anthony? Kiriakou, said that John Brennan used to meet once a week with his top brass at the CIA to review the kill list. That's not a moral nation. That's not how we should be conducting business. I don't believe. Maybe I'm naive. Write to me and tell me. JohnGordonTruth@gmail.com. But it's a very slippery slope. When you go in and you kill 2 and 3 levels of Iranian leadership and they want to retaliate against Trump, I mean, do you really think that that's not a predictable reaction? And God forbid they ever succeed, I think it would devolve us into a serious international crisis and maybe would cause us to go into an all-out war with Iran. But the killing needs to stop. Following international law, the laws of God, our own set of morality in this country, which is what it was founded upon, is where I yearn for us to get back to. I really do. If we're going to lead, we need to lead like leaders lead, and we need to embrace a moral code, and we need to embrace international law. All right. Well, you know the pictures that used to go around about 10 years ago, "Where's Waldo?" Well, that has been surpassed by "Where's Mitch?" And Mitch McConnell has not been seen now for how long? 2.5, 3 months, Anthony? And a lot of people are suspicious, and a lot of people think that he died. That is what the undercurrent is. And so to diffuse that, somebody put up pictures of Mitch with his Chinese wife in their hospital room in Washington. The only problem is there's the picture. He looks happy. He looks alive. I'm just not willing to accept the idea that this is AI. People say, "Oh, he was photographed in that same shirt just a few months ago before he ever went to the hospital. This is AI." The fact of the matter is, I don't know. I'm not willing to go there without more data, but I will tell you this. I have not seen any video or independent journalist pictures of McConnell leaving the hospital, which is what we've been told now, and entering his townhouse in Washington. Now, you would think if he left the hospital and went to his townhouse that there would be citizen journalists and hounds out on the streets just waiting to get that picture. And there haven't been any. But we're told that he's home resting and recovering and everything's going to be okay, don't you worry. Now, the cynical among us believe that this is an intentional cover-up, that they're not willing to let people know that McConnell may have actually passed away. I'm not advancing that rumor. I'm just not prepared to do that. But I'm just telling you what the, I don't know, the conspiratorialist. Okay. Sorry, Anthony. The conspiratorialist will say that he's dead. They're not letting anybody know because John Thune is afraid that the governor of Kentucky will appoint a more conservative replacement to the Senate as an interim if there's a vacancy, which the law would allow and require actually, and that he would appoint a conservative, maybe even Thomas Massey, for God's sakes, and that they would push the SAVE Act. Now, I don't know. What do you think? It's pretty far-fetched, but I've gotten to the point where I really don't believe anything that I'm told until I have proof positive of it. Russia, Russia, Russia. Who's telling the truth? Well, we know now because Tulsi Gabbard put them out there for the world to see. And we know that Fauci lied because a whistleblower found the Fauci files and put them out on the internet. And nobody's denying that they're his. And in those emails, he said that he basically contradicted his public statements on so many levels. Masking, social distancing, the vaccine, the origin of the virus, all this stuff, you know. And so I've just it's made me cynical to the point where I don't know who or what to believe. Do you believe the narrative, the government story? I mean, the fact of the matter is I don't believe much of anything the government tells us. Even under Trump, I've got questions. And I'll show you that in just a second, where I'm coming from on that. But the difference that I would make, for the most part, is that Trump's white lies are not material. Who cares how many people were at his inauguration? I don't like the fact that he told us that he wouldn't deface the East Wing in building the new ballroom. And once the construction began, we see pictures of the East Wing being obliterated. Well, I mean, we can quibble on whether that's material or not. I mean, the fact of the matter is he was going to build the ballroom regardless. And I think I'm for the ballroom. I'm 100% for the ballroom. Unlike the federal judge who ruled that the ballroom construction cannot continue because Trump lacked the authority to commission the ballroom. So, one, that's an activist judge. Two, the judge had no business injecting themselves. If anybody was going to litigate that, it really should be between the executive branch and the Congress, in my opinion. Not with some district court judge appointed by a Democrat who got then a lifetime appointment. It doesn't work for me. But supposedly she stopped the construction, and I guess it's headed straight to the Court of Appeals and will soon end up in the Supreme Court. What is the alternative at this point? $200 million has been spent. A third of the construction has been done. The hole has been dug. The basement has been constructed. The framing is up. I mean, I don't know what the sanction is or what the ramification is if Trump abused his authority. But really, at the end of the day, do you really care? Is that the hill you want to die on? I mean, I said in the moment that I did not like the way he went about it. I would have done it differently if I was president. I would have convened a presidential commission to evaluate architects and engineers to design the ballroom, and it would have been a collaborative effort that involved the American people, historians, and people who are the top of their field in architecture, particularly historical architecture, to maintain the cohesiveness with the White House itself. That's how I would have preferred to have done it. Just like I would have preferred for other people to have changed the name of the Kennedy Center. So I call Trump out on all this stuff. But they're not deal breakers for me. They're not deal breakers for me like floating a spy balloon over the country, letting it hover over our nuclear bases, and then taking $3 million from a company linked to the CCP. Oh, I wonder who would have done that. Oh, yeah, that would have been Joe Biden. Why are we still talking about his cognitive problems? Why aren't we talking about his corruption? Why aren't we talking about him allowing fentanyl to flood into this country over the southern border? Why aren't we talking about him desecrating the Constitution and the laws of the land by opening the southern borders and giving those people phones and money and places to live and scooters to ride around on? Why aren't we talking about his lack of loyalty to our country? I think those acts were treasonous. I really do. I think how he ended up in the place he did, I don't know. I hope he doesn't hate our country. The fact of the matter is he was a public servant and one who I disliked for like 40 years. Talk about living on the dole. He was on the wrong side of just about every issue. But why aren't we talking about his treasonous acts? I don't think he set out to be treasonous, but he certainly acted treasonous when he went to the Ukraine and had the person, the inspector general or the fraud czar who was investigating him, had him removed, and then had his son put on the board of Burisma, making $1 million a year. I mean, the corruption was overwhelming. Where did it go? James Comer said, we've got the receipts. We've got the evidence. And then just poof, it goes away. That's really upsetting to me. So even though I do get disappointed with Trump, excuse me, he does disappoint me. And I am loyal to Trump, but I'm not blindly loyal to Trump. And I am going to call him out when he steps over the line, like he did when he renamed the Kennedy Center. I was glad when the Park Service reversed that decision. And I guess that was the work of a judge who said that he had overreached. And his name's it's back to the Kennedy Center as it should be. I didn't like it, but it wasn't a deal breaker. I don't like this. Trump wanted Jeanine Pirro to indict and try David Hearn. He's a former Olympic athlete. He rode his bike down the mall, stopped at the reflecting pool, and it depends on who you listen to, but what I have been able to discern, and actually what he says, he stopped his bike, he went over and he did pick up a piece of the lining of the reflective pool that he noticed was loose and inspected it, and he didn't rip it off and take it home as a souvenir. But Trump, come on, Mr. President, drove his motorcade through the reflecting pool before it had water in it. And if you're on social media with us on Getter, Rumble, YouTube, or Facebook, you can see the pictures. That's Trump's motorcade driving through the reflecting pool before it had water in it. You're telling me the bicyclist who lifts up a piece of the liner and looks at it and doesn't destroy it or doesn't rip it off and just leaves is guilty of a felony while you're driving your motorcade through the reflecting pool with a liner in it? Give me a break. That's Biden level hypocrisy. And then he calls Jeanine Pirro to the White House and dresses her down because she refuses to prosecute the guy. Mr. President, are you feeling okay? Are you doing okay these days? What's this about? And I love Jeanine Pirro. She's a fighter, and she has been loyal to the end. And for you to dress her down and to reprimand her for not prosecuting somebody who was guilty of nothing and prosecuting him as a felony so you can keep your image intact because you hired the contractor, I believe on a no-bid contract, and he let you down because he did a lousy job in the construction, and that's the real problem. But you drove a whole set of limos Your motorcade through the same reflective pool before it got filled. How much damage did that do? Maybe it didn't do any, I don't know. But it just seems really hypocritical to me. And that's the one beef I've got with Trump. Loyalty is a one-way street with him. And for him to dump on Judge Jeanine when she has been a fighter and a defender and a warrior for him and our country, and he does it all the time. I call him, I want to call him Donald the Great, but unfortunately, I have to refer to him as Donald the Ingrate because he just dumps on his best friends when they step out of line in his terms and don't do exactly what he thinks they should do or what he tells them to do. And, I believe in the chain of command, and I would certainly not buck the president if I was working for him and he issued me an order. But if I am nominated and approved, confirmed to an office in the United States federal government, my loyalty is to the U.S. Constitution and the laws of the country, not to the then President of the United States. Now, it's situational. It depends on what the issue is. If he issues an order to the Secretary of War and he doesn't follow it, then we got a real problem because the president is the commander-in-chief. You don't have that prerogative to disobey the commander-in-chief. But when you're a prosecutor and you've got to make a judgment call based on evidence and law, you've got to be free to do that without pressure from the president. I'm just not down with that. And I'm not down with embarrassing her and evidently dressing her down. It's not cool, man. I don't care if you're the president. It's just not cool. Now, every time I get after Trump like that, 6 months later, I learned he was right after all. So I hope this isn't one of them. If it is, I'll come back and apologize for my assessment on it. But that's where I am with that right now. So anyway, I don't know how the man stands it. He's got everybody domestically and foreign nipping at his heels 24/7. And he's a hard worker. He's a fighter. And, whether the guy who was riding the bike pulled the piece of tape off the reflecting pool, is that material to you? The fact of the matter is, I don't care. I just don't care. I don't mean that I don't care. I don't care in terms of my assessment of Trump's job rating. If his contractor screwed up the job, I care, but I really don't in terms of my view of Trump. If the contractor screwed up and Trump screwed up by appointing him or getting him the work, I may not like it, but it's not a deal breaker for me. It's not material to me. Fighting a war in Iran is material to me. Getting the SAVE Act passed is material to me. Getting this economy on fire, which he has accomplished, is material to me. Helping people get employed, that really counts. Now, the employment numbers came out Friday. They weren't as good as predicted. We had about 30,000 jobs. The predictions were 80,000, but the stock market thumbed its nose at those numbers and continues to march upward. And it's marching upward because there are only there are three things holding this economy back even a little bit. It's the war in Iran. That needs to get settled. Like I said, we're not dependent on Iran's oil, so it's really not hurting us. But the optics are bad, and the morale is bad around it. You could put deportation in that category. We want Trump to deport the illegals in this country, but we want him to do it humanely, not through alligator Alcatraz and not through ICE pulling guns on people, even though I hasten to add those cops in Minnesota were justified in shooting the people. The lady tried to run the cop down. She actually hit the cop with her car. That's using a car as a deadly weapon. I'm sorry you don't do that. I didn't want her to die, but she made an impulsive decision It cost her life. I'm sorry. That's the way the ball bounces. And then the other guy who was protesting and been protesting for a week went home to get his pistol, wore it on his belt, and then went out and then tried to intervene with ICE when they were lawfully detaining someone. That's another thing you just don't do. And he did it. So, but even though I don't question the legitimacy of what they did, the optics are bad. The means and the methods are not working. And it's messy, and it is causing the loss of lives. Not that, but who's to blame? It's not ISIS to blame. It's the protesters that are to blame. It's the people that are engaged in lawlessness that are to blame. But the media puts those pictures up, and people don't like it. And so those things are material. And I would just urge you, Mr. President, try and find it in your heart to be good to the people who've been good to you. I think in the most part you are. I mean, you've made wonderful cabinet appointments, absolutely spectacular. And I know they are loyal to you. But if they mess up, you think Jeanine Pirro messed up. I learned a long time ago, you praise in public and you criticize in private. And I think that this is one of those occasions. And you're just going to have to deal with the bad press and images of the reflecting pool until it becomes yesterday's news. Like I said, I don't care. It's not material to me. I mean, I wish it had turned out different, but nobody's going to dump on, I'm not going to, and I don't think people are going to disparage you because the pool leaks or doesn't work or whatever it doesn't do. And that is the truth. And I am John Gordon. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They're a restaurant services company in Atlanta, Georgia, serving all of North Georgia. If you're tired of automated attendance, unreliable, dirty, not predictable service, call Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. That you can find them on the web at www.pcrenergy.com. PCRE Energy, PCRenergy.com. That's it. And we're also brought to you by Bogey's Beef. They make the best beef jerky and beef sticks you can imagine. They found a real niche in golf courses. They're available in golf courses from east to west, the East Coast to the West Coast, the South to the North. They've got 60 of the top 100 golf courses, and then a whole lot more. You can find them in specialty grocery stores, convenience stores, on Amazon, and you can go and buy directly. Just search for bogiesbeef.com, and it's really good. I don't even like beef jerky, but I love Bogey's Beef. It is really good. All right, let's get to Tina Peters. Let me know what you think of this interview. I left that interview frustrated and not feeling particularly good about it. And I don't really have any apology to make because my job is to tell a story or have our guests tell a story and be transparent about it. We didn't get that from Tina Peters. Now I don't say that to diminish the things that she's done for this country. I know her heart's in the right place, but I just did not enjoy the interview. And as a result, I was disappointed. I really wanted to put her on a pedestal where she deserves to be. But she deprived me in part from the opportunity of doing that. I don't want to belabor it. You be the judge. Write me johngordontruth@gmail.com and tell me what you think. Then stay tuned for Paul Renner. He's a candidate for governor in Georgia or in Florida. You're going to enjoy this interview, whether you live in Florida or not. We talk about all the major issues in the country, and you can't help, even if you're not in Florida, to know who Byron Donalds is and find out a little bit about him through the course of this interview. So let's get right to it now. Here is our interview with Tina Peters. Tina Peters is an entrepreneur, a civic activist, former public servant, and a convicted felon. But there's a lot more to that story. And we're joined by Tina Peters here today. Ms. Peters, I'm not trying to blow smoke. You are one of my heroes in life. The torment, the torture, the mistreatment that you have endured is like nobody I've seen in recent memory other than some J6ers. What in the world? You were in charge of elections in Mesa County, Colorado, and all you were trying to do is make sure that the voting system was accurate. And in exchange for that, they throw you in the clinker. Tell us the backstory.
I was elected as the Mesa County Clerk and Recorder in 2018.
And you were elected, not appointed.
Elected. Yeah, I didn't have a boss. The boss were the people that elected me. So I had no boss except for the people. And the reason that I ran for office, John, is because we had 3.5-hour wait times in motor vehicle. So the clerk and recorder is over 5 divisions. One of them is the motor vehicle department. If you've ever waited in the motor vehicle department, it can be excruciating, especially where in our case, it was 3.5-hour wait. So I said, as a business owner for 32 years, I can fix that. And so the little did I know at that time, the people that I was running against had inroads in with the Dominion voting machines. And they did not want me in as the clerk and recorder because also the clerk and recorder is in charge of the elections. And Mesa County is a very conservative area. The whole Western Slope, as they call it, has always been very conservative. So, in my opinion, there was a scheme in place to turn the Western Slope blue. Colorado used to be a very, very red state. And then as time went by, of course, it became more blue. But let me fast forward. So I did stop the 3.5-hour wait times. I opened up new offices and made changes as a business owner would to make a successful business, which I found out government is a lot different than normal business. They like to be in debt. They like to run up the bills and things like that. So I learned a lot about government after having been a business owner. But I always stayed within budget, and I always entertained whatever the people asked of me. I had an open door policy. People could come in, give me their grievances, like what we should be able to do with our government. And the 2020 election went off without a hitch. I was told that our systems were air gapped, that no one could get into the election systems, that we were the gold standard in Colorado, and we were the example for the whole United States. Well, what I didn't know at the time was Colorado was the central place for Dominion voting machines. In 2013, the mail-in ballot was made law. The Dominion did a pilot program in Colorado, which 3 of the counties were involved in. One of them was Mesa County. And so there was a very tight and close relationship. As a matter of fact, the Colorado County Clerks Association, head of that, Matt Crane's wife worked for Sequoia Smartmatic Dominion for over 2 decades. So they were very brainwashed into loving the machines and the processes and this so-called gold standard. Well, in 2020, Trump won. I found out later not by as much as he should have, but it didn't raise any major alarms with me. In 2021, when I pulled the results for that municipal election, now this is telling you how far down this goes. The municipal election results, and I got sick to my stomach. I was the first person always to see the results that night at 7 p.m. And when I saw the results, I literally felt sick to my stomach. I said, there's no way these people won. It's just, it's virtually impossible for people that were new to the area, that had not campaigned, to win against very seasoned candidates, very well known and loved candidates that had worked hard, had huge crowds. So I knew that something was up. A month later, Dominion and the Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold's office, were coming in to do what they called a trusted build. And later you'll learn how nefarious people use very righteous sounding names to create something that
they're so virtuous while behaving non-virtuously.
Right. So that's what started it all. I had people coming into my office, which like I said, I had an open door policy. I had some constituents ask me if they could come in and tell me about some concerns they had about the voting machines. And I said, well, we have the gold standard, and I was defending it. They came in and started telling me some very, very shocking things about the voting systems. And so as it was an hour-long meeting, a little over. I recorded the meeting. During the meeting, I would bring into my office with these people who were experts that had information to get my employees' feedback on what they were saying. And I said, well, if there's a there, we'll find it. So I made a commitment to the people that if I believed our systems were secure, were safe, but if there was something that wasn't, that we would look into it. So 3 weeks later, approximately, the Secretary of State came in and Dominion came in to do this trusted build that I spoke about. So I backed up the election records. I backed them up before they came in, and I backed them up after they left. And in what's called a forensic image. A forensic image is legal. It's admissible into court as evidence because it's an unalterable image of what the election management server looked like before and after. It has no personal identifying information. Much like you heard in the media, I did not breach the election system. Nothing nefarious. I did not have an unauthorized person according to the law.
Let me just ask you, what did you see on the images that you were able to scrape?
Okay. So it's actually like a snapshot is what it is. It's a snapshot of what it looks like. So the one we took before and the one we took after, when the experts examined it, they found out, and all this is on my website, tinapeters.us. People can see for themselves, make their own determination, read the executive reports before, that talk about each expert report, Mesa County Report 1, 2, and 3 at tinapeters.us. But what they found was there were 36 wireless devices in a system that cannot even be certified with that kind of software and inside of it. Unauthorized software. There were 29,000, John, 29,000. It was 28,700 and some, almost 29,000 election records, essential log files that were deleted, wiped from the system. Well, that was 6 months after the presidential election. It was one.
Now, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we have so little time here, and I've got a lot of things I want to get to. So if I interrupt you, I'm not being disrespectful.
No, that's
I just
okay, please.
want to cover it all. So when you say this information was wiped, was that inherent in the software? Did it automatically cleanse itself after a period of time, or did someone deliberately go in and delete those files?
The answer to that question is both.
Oh.
So the trusted bill was meant to wipe the system and reinstall what they called a golden image. The inside the machine, there was also processes that would overwrite themselves. So the machine has a huge capacity for retention, but the software vendor, the election vendor, actually makes it so short that it will continue to overwrite itself. So it deletes when it gets a certain amount, it will keep deleting. So there's certain files that are automatically deleted, certain files that were deleted by the trusted build.
Okay, so what did you find in the images? Did they correspond to the tally?
Well, so the election management system is what it looked like at that point. So when they deleted and they wiped the adjudication log files, the uh, the there were three different kinds of log files that were deleted. So there was access, adjudication, and the interesting information about the log files that were deleted is that it shows who went in and out of the system. So the access log files are the third kind. Who went in and out of the system, what processes that they performed, who was in the system, how they got to the total vote. So there's no way to audit the election because there's no pathway that shows how they got to the total vote that they come up with magically at the end of the election. So vital election records that are required to be by federal law preserved for 22 months.
All right. So as the person responsible for conducting the election in your county, information was given to you that changed your sense, that you thought that everything was secure and everything was right with the world, but you heard from enough people that you obviously it caused you to arouse your suspicions. And so did you recruit or allow this individual to go in and make a copy of the hard drives?
So I can see where you're going, and it sounds a little nefarious the way that you're asking me this.
No, I'm just trying to get
okay, and
the
so
full picture.
Right.
You were sent to prison because you.
Let me answer your question.
Yeah.
Well, according to the law, I could have anyone since I was in charge. I didn't have a boss. Remember, my boss is the people. Secretary of
Yes.
State Jenna Griswold was never my boss. She had her own job responsibilities that did not include backing up the Mesa County election files. And in the law, it says that I can have anyone that I want in my election room as long as they're accompanied by me or one of my employees that has a background check. So that was never against the law. So let me make that clear.
Well, that was going to be my next question, if that was within your scope of authority, because I would have assumed that it was. I mean, if you're in charge of conducting the election in that county, would you not be able to take steps to make sure that the rules were followed and the data was accurate?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I did.
So you let somebody in, but didn't he come in under an assumed name?
What do you mean by an assumed name?
Well, a fake badge or somebody else's identity?
You know, I'm going to end this now because I can see your bias, and it's very
Ms. Peters, actually, that's just totally the contrary.
Okay.
I have been a defender of yours. I have spoke glowingly about you, but I also have done my research, and I just want to give you a chance to get the truth before our audience. And so, I mean, the easy answer to the question would be,
like I said,
yes, he did, or no, he didn't.
Like I said before, this person was authorized by me to be in my elections department. This man, and so I will go ahead and put this out, and this is something that the trial court, they denied 41 motions. They denied me being able to tell the jury that it was my responsibility and duty to preserve the election records. They would not allow the law to be presented that I could have anyone in there. And they would not allow the affidavit and the proof that this man had worked for high-level government and high-level government operations, which required that his identity be kept secret. One of them was outing and causing the prosecution of the people that started Backpage. Do you know what Backpage is or was? Backpage was one of the largest human trafficking sites ever. And this cyber expert, because of his safety for his family and for future projects that he was going to be asked to do as a government official, I was asked to keep his identity private. So
that's perfectly fine. That is a very sensical explanation, which is what I'm looking for. I just want the whole story, because to an outsider, if the way that it is presented in Wikipedia, which I know
who
is
that's run by.
probably a CIA publication, And obviously they've done everything they can to portray you in a bad light. My purpose is simply to get, like your show, The Truth Matters, to get to the truth. And so it sounds like you did allow someone in. He, according to you, was authorized because you deputized him or gave him access that the law allowed you to do. But he did come in under a false name, and now you've explained why.
No,
you
he
felt
didn't
that
come
was
in
necessary.
under a false name. He came in as a substitute for a man who was part of this, who said that he did not know how to do an image and that he would not be able to do it after it was already arranged for him to do it. And
all right, well, I mean, just what I've read is that Conan Hayes came in and he used Gerald Wood's badge, and that looked sketchy, but another
it depends on how you want to.
Another explanation would be that you all were fearful and didn't want to have his identity known. I don't know.
Okay,
I'm
wait, let me stop you there.
Stop
you there. If I was fearful, as you're saying, then I would never have risked my reputation, my life, and spent almost 2 years in prison. Okay, so I'm not fearful. I am wanting the public to know what goes on inside these machines. I'm wanting and advocating for more transparency into our election processes.
All right, well, let's move to that. So were you able to determine nefarious activity that occurred in the 2020 election?
Yes.
By virtue of the copy of the hard drive that was made?
Yes.
I know the access log was deleted. I don't know what about the adjudication you were getting to, and then there was a third thing that you were about to mention.
Those are all found in the reports, and I would let the reports speak for themselves. They were done by highly qualified cyber experts, PhDs, people very knowledgeable in their field, and those reports have never been disproven. So I would go to tinapeters.us. And if you don't want to read the whole 83, I think the first report's 83 pages, mostly showing the files that were deleted. And if you don't want to read the whole 3 reports, then go read the executive summary, and it'll shock people to see what these machines have been doing to the people's vote. And that's who I represent.
Can you give us a synopsis of the executive summary and tell us what we will read there?
Well, like I stated before, there were almost 29,000 election records deleted from the system. That's illegal. Jenna Griswold should be held up on 29,000 felonies. There were 36 wireless devices in the machines. Anyone from anywhere could have accessed the machines, and we believe have done so.
Okay,
with unauthorized software that should have never been in a voting machine. This was not what you consider COTS, right off the shelf software. This is software that by design is made to alter votes.
All right, so we see that the system is inherently flawed. We don't know what the 29,000 records that were deleted were.
You can see it on. See the report. Go see the report. You can see it. You can see which ones were deleted. Why were they deleted?
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
They were deleted, in my opinion, to cover up the crime of the 2020 election and the 2021 municipal election. And you have to ask yourself, John, if they're willing to cheat on local city council elections, and if they're willing to cheat, as we've proven with Ed Solomon's work, if they're willing to cheat on ballot initiatives that raise the property taxes, there's so much that the people need to know. If they're willing to cheat on abortion issues, if they're willing to cast votes and manipulate votes to show people are being put into office, or initiatives are being voted in a way that doesn't represent the people. I mean, how many people would you say would vote to raise their property taxes? That's what happened. That's what happened in Arapahoe County, and we have the proof of it. So I guess I would put you, because your show is called The Truth with John Gordon. I would say, John, go read the reports. Then let's do a follow-up interview, and I would like to hear it, or maybe even have you on my show. I'd like to hear what you have to say. But my time is run short, so I need to go. Is there anything else?
Well, you said you were going to give us 30 minutes. We've got 10 more minutes to go. I hope I haven't offended you. You seem to think that I'm coming after you, and instead I'm on your team. I don't think you realize the fact that for 2.5 years I worked with Charles Bundon, Bob Shealy, and Preston Halliburton in Georgia.
Bundren?
In Charles Bundren?
Bundren. Charles Bundren.
Bundren.
Are you talking about
him?
the attorney? Or who?
Yeah.
Okay. His name's Bundren.
I said Bundren.
Okay.
I stumbled on his name initially,
Okay.
but I corrected it and said Bundren. Bob Shealy, Preston Halliburton, in the case of Jefford, Satir, and Perdue, who I recruited, by the way, to come into the case, against the Fulton Board of Elections. So if we were talking about Fulton County, Georgia, I would tell you that we have 3,200 duplicate ballots that are visible on the Secretary of State's own website. We've got 14,000 people that are registered to vote when you alphabetize them by first name, have perfectly sequential voter ID numbers. We have thousands of votes that were cast at homeless shelters, UPS stores, and abandoned apartment buildings. The list goes on and on. We had 20,000 pristine ballots that Susie Voiles, Bridget Thorne, and Robin Satir and Scott Hall each independently testified that they saw in the State Farm Arena waiting to be scanned, all filled out by a printer, untouched by the human hand and not folded. So that's the information I'm trying to elicit from you. I mean, I know that the records were deleted and I know that the access files were deleted, but I'm trying to connect the dots so we can see what the exact impact was into the election itself in terms of the voter tally. That's all I'm trying to get to, not to attack you or put you on the spot, but I'm just trying to get the information so our viewers and listeners can understand.
And I would recommend to you, John.
I also ran for Attorney General of Georgia on elections integrity with President Trump's endorsement. So I assure you, you and I are on the same team.
Well, I
understand you've been battered, abused, and abused, and that the wounds are probably sensitive. But that's not my intent at all. So let's just breathe and let's see if we can't finish this interview pleasantly, because I'm not here to attack you.
If you know all of this, then I would suggest to you, John, you didn't do a lot of background for you to ask the questions that you've asked me during this interview. You need to go read the Mesa County Reports 1, 2, and 3. And then...
Well, that doesn't help our viewers for me to read it. I can come back and read it and go through it piece by piece.
Let's do that.
It would be more authentic for you to do.
Let's make another interview if you would like. You can air this one. I have nothing to hide. The truth is the truth, and I will stand by it. But I would think that, just doing a little bit more research into your subject instead of giving me talking points about what Wikipedia and the media says. I mean,
look, if you know something bad about me or something that someone has said about me that's false, I would welcome the opportunity to be asked about it so I could respond.
And I
just don't understand.
And I did respond. And I did respond, right. John. So I would point people to Mesa County Reports 1, 2, and 3. If they don't want to read the whole report, read the summaries, read the people that wrote the reports so that they can see their bona fides, then their credibility, and understand that this information needs to get out. I'm not going to sit here and try to defend what the mainstream media is saying. I have no interest in doing that because they lie to the people. They want them to believe things that are not true. So I'm not going, I don't need to defend myself because the truth is already there. And so that's,
I don't think most people know the truth.
They don't. And that's why
you know the truth.
And so your job is to let them.
I have a sense of the truth.
Right.
And I'm trying to give you an opportunity. But let's move on. Did you run against the Secretary of State when Was
I
she your
did.
opponent?
February 14th, I ran against Jenna Griswold. 4 months,
Yeah.
4 months into the into the campaign, I raised more money than all of her opponents and my opponents combined. We saw in Garfield County, for instance, the votes being flipped the night of the election, a week before the primary that I won. We saw that. I mean, all the media was coming to me. We know that you won. We recognize that. The one person that was running against me, there were two. Pam Anderson was one of the directors of the Center for Tech and Civic Life. Did you ever do any reporting on the Center for Tech and Civic Life that Zuckerberg funneled like $850 million into to make sure that Biden won? Well, this was the director on the website. I think they've taken her name off of there now, but she is also the daughter-in-law of Norma Anderson, who sued to keep Trump off the ballot in Colorado. And the U.S. Supreme Court actually delivered a verdict overturning what the Colorado Supreme Court said 9-0. So that was my opponent. My other opponent was a gentleman who had been on with Phil Weiser on a loan consortium that just came out of the blue, even admitted in a debate that we had in front of all these people that he felt that Biden won. So these are the two Republican candidates. We see the votes flipping. I know that I won that primary. So after the election was over, and I lost, I paid $255,000 to do a recount, and Jenna Griswold violated the law in that recount. She used the machines once again instead of the voter verified paper ballots that the law at that time called for, and to try to cover up the fact that she had cheated in that election. So yes, I do.
Well, so she is also the person who removed you as the head of the elections in Mesa County and installed someone else.
Do you know why?
Isn't that usurping the will of the voters who put you there?
Absolutely is. And
does she have any legal authority to do that?
The only way that she was able to do that was because I would not sign a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, that said that I would retract, repudiate, and recant what I said on Facebook Live, that these machines need to be more transparent to the people and not be allowed to do what they're designed to do. When I did not recant that, plus some other egregious things she had in there, she went to a judge in my county and said, look, she's going to break the law, and convinced the judge that I was breaking the law, that I was not doing my duty. Jenna Griswold is and never was my boss. The only way you can take out an elected official, and I'm sure you know this, John, is
a recall.
Is by a recall.
She didn't do a recall.
They tried to recall. No. They tried to recall. They tried to frame.
Well, it fell short.
And it fell
short.
Yes.
A pretty strong argument could be made that your political opponent really was, when you were trying to validate the results of the 2020 election, I think within your authority, I guess you got too close to the target and she resorted to lawfare. And is she responsible for your having gone to prison?
In my opinion, her and Phil Weiser are very much responsible, and Joe Biden and Merrick Garland. We uncovered something so egregious no one had ever seen inside these machines and what they were capable of before. So this was an attempt, in my opinion, to silence the truth coming out. And
we saw a very similar behavior on the part of the elected officials in Coffee County, Georgia,
that's right,
where the head of the elections in that county tried to look inside the machines, and she had people with badges and handcuffs show up on her front door threatening to arrest her if she went any further.
What they've done
it sounds remarkably similar.
What they've done to me has been nothing short of weaponization in the highest form, at the highest level. And because they don't want the people to know. what they've been doing. And so, we can have another show for this. We can go into the Venezuelan whistleblowers. We can go into where all these machines started. I mean, this has opened up a world of information for people to understand that they have been stealing these elections for a very long time.
Why has this information not been allowed to come out? I was personally elated when President Trump went on national television to talk about the 2020 election and what they had found, but I didn't think he went very far in the analysis. And I'm wondering, when is the other shoe going to drop? When is the FBI going to report on what they found in those ballots in Fulton County that they got under a court-ordered subpoena and are analyzing? It's just been crickets since they got the ballots, though.
When the people speak out. General Flynn, when all this started with me, I said, what is your advice? Nobody knew about little clerk in Mesa County until they raided my office and caused a big uproar. FBI raided my home in a pre-dawn raid. They took my husband from me, who was in a assisted care facility that had just gone in a few months prior because of Parkinson's. Nobody knows the whole story of Tina Peters and what they've put me through to silence my voice, which is silencing the people's voice. So what it's going to take is not people saying, well, what is President Trump going to do? What's the FBI going to do? What's the DOJ going to do? It's what are you going to do? What is each person listening to your show today? What are they going to do? Are they going to stand up and start calling the White House? I mean, I have on my website, tinapeters.us, I have a 100-day plan, which is now down to 95 days. And by the time this airs, it's probably going to be even less before the midterms, of how we can save our elections. I met with the president. I told him, I said, we are going to lose this country if we don't get rid of these machines. Now, can we do it by November? Probably not. But a lot of steps are being taken to hand count paper ballots. I don't care, on my website, and I'm not going to outline the whole plan because I want people to go there. I want them to read it for themselves. Too many people have been spoon fed they're very much, they like to be fed the information, but then they don't want to do anything about it. And so now is like a 1776 moment, John. People have to.
Well, it's amazing to me that in a United States District Court, a U.S. federal judge said in Curling versus Raffensperger that the machines were suspect, but there was inadequate time to do anything about it before the election. That judicial statement was made 6 years ago, and we still have the machines.
That's right.
We can't pass the SAVE Act, and it seems like President Trump, I don't know that of anybody, he should be the most upset about what happened in 2020. I know he is, but it almost seems like you, me, he are powerless to do anything about it. You've got the majority leader of the United States Senate flicking off 80% of the American people who are in favor of a government issued ID in order to vote. And he's just saying, oh, well, we don't have enough votes in the Senate,
John,
so I'm not bringing it up.
I disagree with the point where you say we're powerless to do anything.
6 years later, we haven't moved the needle much. I'm sorry.
You know why? Because the people aren't involved. The people are expecting someone else to do their job for them. This is, when I last checked, we as citizens this is our government, our country, and we have to protect it. So we can't assume. And here's another thing. When I talked about how people are being selected, I don't know if anybody's watched the movie Selection Code that's on my website, but it tells how. It's a very easy way to sit down and see exactly how they're flipping the votes. But it's up to the people. It's not up to John Thune. It's not up to the president. It's not up to anyone else but us. And I'll tell you why. Here's a good example, and I'm living proof of it. I'm sitting here before you outside a prison. Do you know why I'm not in prison right now? It's
Donald Trump.
nope. Nope. It's not Donald
Okay.
Trump. It's because the people. It's because the people out there never gave up on the truth. They never gave up. I'll get emotional when I start talking about the people because that's who I serve. They never gave up knowing that what was done to me was unfair. It was the people, and that's who need to rise up now. Do you know when I was introduced, when I had lunch with the president just a month after I was released, and when I came out, there was a meeting getting ready to take place with him, and there's pictures out. I'm sure people have seen them, the pictures with me and the president, and then the pictures with J.D. Vance was there in the Oval Office when I came out of the private dining room, and excuse me, and Marco Rubio and Susie Wiles and such, and President Trump said, "This is the free Tina Peters." And they started laughing. They said, "We know who she is." You know why he said, "This is the free Tina Peters"? I found out. I was at the mall, at the Washington Mall, and one of the young fellow walks up to me, and he said, "Miss Peters," he said, "I was an intern at the White House," and he said, every day, thousands of calls would come in, and they have to answer the calls, right? Thousands of calls would come in, and they would just say, "Free Tina Peters." That's why I'm out. That's why I'm not in prison right now. It's because of the people. And so I would say this is a clarion call in closing, that this needs to go out to every single person, that you need to take control of your destiny. You need to take control of this country. It's not up to the president. It's not up to Pete Hegseth to declare war, although, you might want to call and tell them it is a national emergency, that these machines need to go. You might want to start looking into not just gathering more information, because there's enough information to show that these machines and these electronic poll books and all these things are being done with computers that can be hacked and that are being hacked. It's up to the people. It's up to the people to call Washington, to call Howard Lutnick, to call the different people. Go to my website. There's a 100-day plan of how we can do this. And just to give you the very simple version of the 100-year plan. Because CISA is, because the EAC, the members have been fired by the president, which is what I asked him to do, and have not have to have Senate confirmation to put the new ones in, which we don't have time for. Do you know that Hicks and the other Democrat on there, and which made the Republican, there's 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, made them ineffective? They were appointed by Obama in 2015. Do you know how long their terms were supposed to be?
No idea.
4-year terms, 2 of them. They could serve up to 4 years. Well, you can do the math from 2015. They were left in place. Do you know who can decertify the machines? The EAC.
CISA. I'm sorry?
The EAC. The EAC was put in place by HAVA. CISA is an advisory, and I met with CISA, the assistant director of CISA. And they can advise the counties, they can advise the states on and let them know the vulnerabilities, which they have yet to do, in my opinion, to the fullest extent. You can call the White House, call these places. There's a few numbers on my website where you can call. You can follow me on X at Real Tina Peters, where I give phone numbers and things like that. But people are the ones that are going to change. People have to.
Well, I'm not sure. I agree with you in principle. I certainly think that great silent majority that Richard Nixon spoke about is still in full swing. But 80% of the American people have made their opinion known about voter ID, and we still can't get it across the line.
That's
So
according to polls.
as much as I want to believe what you're saying and agree with you, sometimes I don't see it being actualized, leading me to wonder why.
Tell you
What
why.
is
You want to know
afoot?
why?
I don't think anybody in America that wants honest, free, fair elections wants these computers to run the elections.
You know why?
The American people have been very clear about that. But in your own county, you had a groundswell of citizens saying, we do not want these electronic machines, yet you got them. So that is the question, why?
Okay, because this has gone on long enough that people have been, and that's why the movie is called Selection Code, because so many people have benefited from the selection, whether it's Secretary of States, governors. I mean, we saw that with Katie Hobbs. It was obvious Carrie Lake won. Everybody knows Carrie Lake won. It's because these people are being selected. So when you're selecting judges, you're going to get a bad result. You're going to get someone that has been a recipient of the corrupt result, that are going to do the will of the people. And this is going on in Congress as well. And even the Venezuelan whistleblowers, because if you haven't, there's so much to say at this point, but basically where Smartmatic started with Hugo Chavez and all of this, we've got whistleblowers that have come forward. We can trace back where these machines and all the cheating started. But when you have people that have been the benefactors, and there's a lot of them in Congress, that's why you're seeing what you're seeing. So it's time.
Is it corrupt? Is it corruption?
Yes.
Are they being paid? Are they getting money?
I don't know
the table?
what they're getting, but I know a friend of mine, Trennis Evans, was offered money, I think it was $28,000 a month, to spy on and turn in J6 people by the SES, which is a private fund in the government. There are people in the government still, in the FBI, in the CIA, and all these different branches that are not for our country. So
who is the puppet master? I
that's
agree
a whole
with what
nother
you're saying.
show. Really.
I keep looking for the puppet master. I can't even find the curtain. I have my suspicions, but I don't. How do we expose who these bad people are?
Well, start with Obama and then work yourself up. He's one of them. The Clintons, of course. You wonder why they were such close relationships with China and so on and so forth. So, this is a bigger scope of conversation than we really want to go into on this show. The thing of it is this.
No, I want to go into it. I go into it every week.
But the thing,
I think we have a shadow government, and I think the CIA is the central hub of that. And Clapper, Comey, Brennan are principal players, but I think they're getting their orders from somebody else. And it would be nice to. What we need to do is to have grand juries, like is happening in South Florida right now. We're told, but again, it's been awfully quiet for a long time, looking into John Brennan. Somebody needs to turn state's evidence and say, here's what's happened. Here are the people that are doing it.
They're doing that. But my focus right now is making sure that these machines aren't being used in our midterms. So that's coming. All that's coming. But you've got people in power that are in power, throwing opposition, subverting our elections. And that's where we have to stop. Because if you look at every single thing that happens in this country, everything, whether it's the open borders, the human trafficking, the raising of property taxes, the installing of so-called representatives, which are not representing the people, all of it stems from our voting machines. All of it stems from the voting processes. All of it stems from computers that control your poll books and your registration databases. When I ran for Secretary of State, I ran on, we need to just wipe the registration databases out. And if you want to vote, you go to your clerk's office, your local county clerk's office, you go to the elections department, you show your ID, and you register to vote for that year. Or you could do it every 2 years. But you cannot sweep a dirt floor. You cannot fix and clean up the voter rolls. And look at how many states, including Colorado, will not even give the federal government access to the voting rolls because they said it has personal identifying information. And you've got the government who knows everybody's personal identification anyway, because we have Social Security, we have all these other things that are run by the government. So it's just a smokescreen by these states with corrupt secretaries of states and governors and attorney generals, which Colorado is getting ready to install them again, that are refusing to give transparency. And that's what we need. That's what the people need to demand, John, is they need to demand transparency and accountability. And they can do that.
We shout it from the mountaintops every Saturday from noon to 2 on the John Fredericks Radio Network, and CDM.press and across the web. Or you have John Thune's number. Let's just start a campaign right now.
Go find it.
To start ringing his phone off the wall.
It's not hard to find. Go find it.
You happen to have it at your fingertips?
Well, not at my finger.
That's all right. We'll find it and we'll publish it.
I wasn't prepared for that, but I'm sure.
Well, that's all right. No, I'm just, I didn't expect that you would.
But I have Howard
just in the case, but we will find it. Yep. We will publish it. And we will encourage our listeners to start ringing his phone off the hook. Let's start a national movement right here.
There you go.
And drive John Thune over the edge to do what's right and give us the SAVE Act. It's not going to cure the problem, but it's a good step in the right direction.
Ask him why.
So let me just ask you in closing, mm-hmm. You have paid a horrible toll for trying to do the right thing. I truly do believe that, in spite of what you might have thought earlier in the interview. Nevertheless, you were sentenced to 9 years in prison for trying to do the right thing. You served 2. What was it like? Was it just like the most miserable 2 years of your life, as I would expect?
I will say this. Yes, it was. I mean, but I had no fear. I had women chest to chest with me, ready to beat me up, stab me, kill me. All of it. I won them.
Why were they mad at you?
They thought I was a privileged, and here I am put in prison. And I said, listen, we have the same colors that we wear every day. But, when they first met me, of course, they thought I was a white privileged person, until they realized that, what were the facts. And I advocated for the women. I actually helped them know their rights, that you don't have to be they can't put you in the hole for 2 or 3 months, that the law says you can only be in the hole 15 days at the most. I started empowering the women there, and I earned their respect. And I love the people. I don't care whether it's in prison. I don't care what race, nationality. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. I didn't when I ran my clerk's office. I didn't check anybody's voter affiliation to find out if they could work for me, as long as they could do the job. And this is something, John, and I know you know this, that affects every single person. If you watch Kill Chain, which was the Democrats' movie with Harry Hursty about how the elections were being stolen using the machines and the proof of it. This affects Democrats, it affects Republicans, and they're on both sides, the people that are doing this, and they're beholden to a higher power, and it's not the same one that we serve.
Well, Tina Peters, thank you very much, and I do appreciate your coming on today. I do hope you'll come back. I'll go to your website. I'll read those reports that you encouraged us to read, and whether you come back or not, I'm going to read them. And I do wish you well, and I'm sorry for the problems that you have and the fate that you've suffered, when I do believe that you're a patriot and trying to do the right thing, and that is the truth.
Thank you, John.
Paul Renner wants to be governor of Florida. He's a smart guy. He's a veteran. He went to Davidson, and he went to the University of Florida Law School. Paul Renner, welcome to The Truth.
Great to be with you, John.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Campaigning is hard, isn't it?
It's all day, every day, 7 days a week, but it's a lot of fun too. You get to see a lot of corners of the state you didn't visit before and meet people all over this great state.
So where do you make your home in Florida?
Palm Coast, so about an hour south of Jacksonville, more specifically between St. Augustine and Daytona.
Well, that's not Space Coast, but it's awfully close, right?
About an hour and change from the Space Coast. If you're going to Titusville, at least a little farther, Brevard's a long county, which is really the Space Coast. So, but to the Space Center, probably about an hour and 15 minutes.
Well, I have a good friend who was born and raised in Florida. He happens to have liked it the way that it was, but he and I talk about politics just about every day. And he has an interesting perspective on Florida, and namely that it is a very complex state, and it is a center for industry. It is a center for space exploration. It has some of the best colleges and universities in the country. Obviously, marine life and the environment is very important to all people in Florida. You got to have a lot on the ball. You've got to have a lot of savvy to be able to run this $1.3 trillion economy known as Florida. Are you up to the job?
Well, I think I'm in this field. I'm the only one up to the job. If you just look at background experience, leading up to running something like that, 20 years in the military, served in 2 wars as a Navy commander at age 23 in Operation Desert Storm, 20 years later in Afghanistan. Leadership throughout that, leadership under pressure. As a state prosecutor, trying habitual and violent habitual offenders. I've been a business owner, partner in a business, and leading the Florida House of Representatives as speaker, about 500 employees in that kind of executive role in the legislative branch, but really kind of an executive management type role. Nobody in this race comes anywhere close in terms of being ready to step in and do this job. And then, when you go to results, that's a whole another reason to vote for us, because we, according to the governor, had the 2 most successful sessions when I was running the state legislature, the House in Florida history, really building the free state of Florida. And so if you want somebody who can protect and strengthen it, you go to the architect who built it.
How's your relationship with DeSantis?
Good.
Why hasn't he not endorsed you?
No, he hasn't. And that's a little bit of a frustration, but, it is what it is. And, he's obviously not weighed in for Byron Donalds, unlike everybody else in the political class. The grassroots, though, as I think he knows well, is in a different place. They agree with what the governor said, is that Byron's never been here for any of the wins here in the free state of Florida. He was not part of it. He's passed 2 bills in 5 years in Congress and missed 150 plus votes. So he's not the kind of guy that would look anything like a Ron DeSantis as governor. And so the governor realizes that. He stayed out to date. I don't know that he'll get in this race, but he's not going to be getting in for Byron Donalds.
Well, did it surprise you that President Trump endorsed Byron Donalds so early?
I know Byron has been working on this for 10 years. And so at least 5 years with the president in Congress, speaking out for the president on Fox News, and all those times he's missing votes, but he's never missed an interview. So I think he's done everything kind of to follow the playbook of trying to get the president's endorsement and campaigning with him. And frankly, the president in his defense, doesn't know the rest of us nearly as well as he would know Byron as a result of that. But, I've heard rumors that maybe he regrets the decision, but he hasn't shown that in his public statements, at least. And so here we are. I think people want to make their own decision. I talk to Trump clubs all the time who say, I love the president, but I'm not voting for that guy. I'm voting for you. So we're encouraged by where we see things at the grassroots level. And if that plays out among the voting public at large, we'll win this race.
Well, I'm sort of surprised that a guy from Brooklyn, New York can come to Florida and win a congressional seat and then run for governor. Now, I happen to like Byron Donalds as a person, but I think that his CV is very weak and does not qualify him to run a state with a $1.3 trillion economy and the complexity that this state offers. And so I will not be voting for him. And I am giving you a very hard look. Are you concerned about the direction our country is going in right now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, your show, The Truth is really right at the center of what's happening We have people on the left that simply their philosophy rejects all truth, like Pontius Pilate, in responding to Jesus and said, "What is truth?" They can't define what a woman is. And that's why they can't accept that we can argue over what the truth is, but we shouldn't argue that there is one when it comes to boys and girls and things that are so basic to humanity. But they've rejected all truth. And as a result, you see the hot mess that these blue states are. But people are buying it. It can go, again, to make a biblical reference, it's back to the Garden of Eden. That left, promises that all your wildest dreams can come true. We can all be our own gods and set our own truth and have everything that you imagine in paradise here on earth. And that's just not how real life works. Conservatives are more realistic and practical, and understand that, we need checks and balances. We need a constitutional republic to make sure we don't have tyranny. We need a free market where everybody has value and gets to decide what product or service they're going to buy at what price, and these types of things, that where freedom just simply works. And we have a whole philosophy that rejects that totally today. And so, I'm very concerned about the direction of the country. And, Franklin talked about a rising and setting sun, and that the sun was rising on the new republic. But the question is, what about the next 250 years? Is our sun rising or setting on America? And I think that will be determined by, whether we follow the principles that brought us here.
Well, I study this stuff every single day of my life, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I have been engaged and involved in politics since I was 10 years old, when I put my first bumper sticker on for Richard Nixon in 1959. So I feel like I have a little insight. And I can tell you that for the first time in my life, I am really concerned about the future of our country. And I wish I had it with me. It's on my desk in the other room. But I drew a map with all the influences that I feel like, not influences, but pressure and adversarial pressure that is being placed on our country. And when you talk about men and women's sports, I think it is a fiction. I don't think anybody in their right mind, I think someone would really have to be certifiably crazy to make any kind of an intellectual argument that men should be allowed to play sports in a women's sport with women. Not only is it dangerous, but the thing that puzzles me, some of the very people that you would think would be defending women's rights are the ones advocating to let men play in women's sports. Trans men, obviously, is what we're talking about. But I'm just wondering if it's not a fiction that has been forced on our agenda by a foreign adversary, or maybe from internally, to divide this country apart. And, I've worked in the inner city in Atlanta, where your birthplace, for the last 20 years in the community of English Avenue. It is the worst zip code in America for any social ailment that you care to mention. Unemployment, poverty, hunger, diabetes, HIV, you name the social ill, it is there. And we were greeted so warmly by the people that live there, but the leadership stiff-armed us. And it opened my eyes. And I had a friend, Ivory Young, who was a city councilman for that area. And it really bothered me. I said, Councilman, I don't understand. Why are these people giving us such a hard time when we're here to help? He said, John, you don't really understand? I said, no, I don't. He said, they are the poverty pimps. You are threatening their power base and their economy that they thrive on. And so it opened my eyes to a broader picture that I think that the leadership is keeping us divided, because I've got great relationships with 6,000 Black people in the English Avenue community, many of whom I know by first name and vice versa. But the leadership seems to be determined to keep black and white tension going. Is men and women's sports part and parcel of that?
Well, first of all, I agree with you that countries like China and others do want to destroy this country.
Yeah.
They do have influence operations here. They do fund some of these left-wing organizations and indirectly campaigns for office. You just elected a guy in Michigan, the Democrats did, who's one of his main supporters says we deserve 9/11, who's a Islamist extremist. and yet we have, I think, in my opinion, as a result of a loss of faith and a result of a loss of belief in capital T truth, you have kind of everybody for themselves, everybody that's just gunning to get what they can get, and a lot of grift. Grift is widespread, and the people you're describing are all about making money for themselves and not actually solving the problems that their organization probably in their mission statement is set out to fix. Because if it gets fixed, they're out of their their money train, their honey pot goes away, and it's very, very disappointing. That we don't look around and see leaders who are offering their lives, their fortune, their sacred honor to the good of the country, the good of the community. And I'm running in part because I don't see that in Byron Donalds. I don't see someone who is about helping other people. He's about helping himself. He's part of that grift machine. And I think we're going to pay a price if he's the nominee. And so I'm here to run and put our message forward to win the vote, win your vote, and win others that are listening on August 18th in the primary, so that we can have somebody that has actually spent their whole life in dedication to the community and to the military, as a prosecutor, as a Speaker of the House, building the free state of Florida. You want people like that. I'm not the only one, but you got to have people like that in these top positions, or we're going to be in deep, deep trouble.
So as I mentioned, I've been in and around politics my whole life. I was chairman of the Georgia Republican Foundation, the money machine for the party, in the early 90s. I've run for office twice myself, once for state senate, then for attorney general with President Trump's endorsement in 2022. And I've I didn't get elected, I'm sorry to say, either time, but I've all the jobs that I've looked at in government, I think the one that would have the least appeal to me would be Speaker of the House of a state legislature. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like to have to survive in that environment. You've got everybody after you, the Democrats, the special interest, your own party at times. I mean, how do you make that system work and get anything done?
Focus on the mission. As a veteran, it's about staying laser focused and not letting personality, ego, arrogance, the politics that destroys legislative chambers. Just look at Congress, where they're so dysfunctional. All they do is fight with each other and raise money to run for their next election. But by really focusing in, now that's hurt me in the governor's race, and I wasn't, doing live streaming on social media to try to build my name ID like somebody else in the race.
Well, you're catching up now.
Yeah, I'm catching up now. That's right.
You're on the truth. We're going to launch you.
That's right. But I was focused on doing the job, and we did the job. We delivered more conservative wins. I say that when we were in charge, conservatives won every battle. And so if you're looking around for who's qualified, who's got the actual receipts to prove that I can deliver on issues like affordability, ending public corruption, human trafficking, eliminating property taxes in the case of affordability, lowering insurance rates and electric rates. I've got specific plans in our contract with Florida for each and every one of those things, and I will get them done. And you can just look at my past history. We did get them done, the things that we set out to do when I was Speaker. But you're right. It's look, it's 120 in the House and in Florida and 40 in the Senate. Everybody's got to agree to get each and every bill. They got to pass it by majorities in both chambers, and the governor's got to sign it. You're threading a needle, and we did that over and over again with incredible results. If you just look back at what was accomplished during those 2 years, it's really the bulk of what people call the DeSantis legacy.
Well, I can tell you, I've heard really good things about those years that you were leading the House of Representatives. This last session was, I don't know, calling it dysfunctional, would that be too strong a term?
No, it wouldn't. And, affordability is the number one issue, and they did virtually nothing. They threw together something for property taxes in 3 days after a year and a half of talking about it that could have been much better, both on benefits, like my plan is to truly eliminate taxes for homestead property, and also have some backup plan for police and fire and so forth that my plan does have. They have no plan. They have no backup plan. So it's a half-baked measure. I know people will vote for it because they're desperate right now, and it's unfortunate because people really, really need this help and this relief from property taxes. And I supported what the governor was proposing. He didn't get what he wanted, and so I think this legislature has been a colossal failure on many fronts.
Well, it certainly seems that way, and that's sort of the what the undercurrent and the murmurs seem to be saying, which I think bodes well for you, actually, because you did not have that experience. How do you prevent yourself from becoming paranoid when you're in that kind of a serious leadership role and you've got people coming after, nipping at your heels all the time, and people trying to probably undo you? How do you keep focused on the prize and not allow the noise to get to you?
Well, it's just that you focus on the prize. And I would say from my military experience, I remember going to law school and everybody was freaking out about their law school exams. I'm thinking, well, nobody's shooting at us. I've had mortars up overhead and that kind of thing. And so we're being, in the case of Desert Storm, being, from here to, across my room here to a mine, free floating mine that our EOD guys were destroying and swimming back to the boat. We'd pull them back in the boat, and if something happened, it happened to us, not our ship a mile away. And so when you have experiences like that, and I had others similar to that, the more stress that comes, the more I get quiet and focused. And I just continue to do that where the lobbyists and the naysayers and the media and the people that you're right are trying to undo you behind your back. You just stay focused on the prize. I was blessed to have a good partner in the Senate who was much more moderate than I was, but we worked very well together. We just treated each other, in good faith and communicated. And as a result, had a good partner there to get things through the Senate that we got through for her in the House, and a good relationship with the governor to get these things done and not let, everybody in the zoo, turn it into a zoo, but stay focused on results. And we had good members in sponsoring these bills that really, put forward the effort. But it starts with leadership, and, you get the most, like a good head football coach, you get the most out of players you can, and the people that are there to put them in places where they can really succeed and encourage them, inspire them. That's what good leadership's all about. And we did that, and the results, prove the point.
Outside the border states, I can't think of another state that probably has more influx of immigration than Florida does. I can tell you that it highly offends me that the Biden administration and the Obama administration just opened the doors and let people come in. And Obama very overtly stated that he felt that he wanted to change the character of America. And I think this is one of the pillars of his plan. And it seems like that to some degree they are winning. Does it astound you that we cannot pass the SAVE Act? And what does that say about John Thune and the other Republicans in the U.S. Senate?
Yeah, it really is astounding. And I worry very much about this election because, what would motivate Republicans? Here in Florida, we talked about our legislative failures these last 2 years after I left, and what's happening in Congress where they can't get anything done. And now one of them wants a promotion to governor here in the state of Florida. If they can't get that done, I think a lot of Republicans are going to sit home, unfortunately. And I don't know what to say about it. You got to, again, have leaders that say, we're not here for your reelection because you don't want to vote for this, whatever. We're here to pass legislation to improve our country, our security in the case of election security, or to make the lives of people better when it comes to affordability, whatever the issue is. And if you can't get on board with principles that you campaign for in every single election, then maybe you should just go home and not give in to the interest of those individual members who, for whatever reason, don't want to take a vote on this, Republican members. And that just, to me, is very, very disappointing.
It kind of conveys to me that they're in on it. I can't imagine that a Republican senator would not vote for it unless he feels like doing so would cost him possibly his seat in the Senate. And maybe he's from a state with a lot of immigrants, a lot of illegals.
Yeah, or a Democrat state like a Susan Collins,
Right.
that thinks she's going to lose her race. And so that's more important than, the SAVE Act, as it's named, to save our election integrity across the country. And there's nothing more important. If we don't have free and fair elections, then we don't have a country. We don't have really a constitutional republic anymore. And so it's critical. Part of my 100-day contract with Florida is to make sure we pass additional measures to make Florida the gold standard in the nation for election integrity.
Well, it's fun to talk about inside baseball, but let's talk about the issues in the time that we've got remaining. What do you consider to be the top 3 issues, or 4, whatever, that you're campaigning on?
There's 4 big buckets in my contract with Florida, which is at voterenner.com for those who want to take a look at it. But first one is affordability. Again, we have a plan to eliminate homestead property taxes. We have benefits and help for small businesses and renters as well. A bunch of savings that pay for that, as well as some replacement taxes on tourists and outside speculators like private equity that have bought up homes and turned them into rentals, that kind of thing. We have specific plans to bring down homeowners insurance by 10 to 20%. That I won't go into in the time we have, but it will work. They're measurable, not exciting, but they work. They're practical steps we can take right now in those first 100 days, as well as reforming how electrical utilities make money. They're very regulated, and we can change that in a way that they do well when we do well, not based on how much they spend on these solar fields that are dotting and scarring our landscape. That's number 1. Number 2 is safety. That means going after public corruption, ending human trafficking, shortening death penalty appeals to 3 years so families don't grow old and die before they ever see justice for their loved one. Average stay on death row in Florida is over 30 years for the worst of the worst. Health freedom is number 3, and along with that is the health of our environment. I'm a big health freedom advocate, and we're going to make sure that that's front and center during my 8 years as governor. And we're going to protect our natural resources and Everglades, Springs, all that. Make sure we leave it better than we found it. And then lastly is freedom, keeping it free, which is election integrity, AI Bill of Rights, Second Amendment, and leaning into strengthening the Second Amendment and pushing back against the red and green threat of China and Islam, which threaten our country. And some of that goes to stopping immigration from those countries, for example, and not allowing enclaves to develop, which are developing. You saw what happened in Michigan, and now you're seeing it in Tampa with a large growth of people that are going to ultimately demand that we assimilate to them. And the same with China. China's an enemy. No land purchases. We did that when I was speaker. We're going to make sure they're not in our schools, in our universities. We're going to root that threat out wherever it is, but they're an active threat to undermine the United States. China is, and we have to have somebody as a former intel officer who gets it and knows what to do to stop it.
So how are you going to break out? It seems like there are 4 legitimate candidates, you, Byron Donalds, the former, I guess he still is the lieutenant governor appointed, and then James Fishback, this young guy who seemingly has come out of nowhere. How do you evaluate his chances, and what's your assessment of him?
Well, he's a social media phenomenon. He's somebody that's very, very good at social media, but you have to ask the question of the things I lay out for people. What is the background and experience that would qualify him in any way, shape, or form to be the next governor? What has he done in politics before showing up to run? What is his vision? He's got some things that he and I actually agree on, not having H-1B visas, for example, no AI data centers, these hyperscale data centers. We have some points of agreement, but having an agenda, and I'm reminded of Vivek Ramaswamy because it seems a similar comparison, kind of came out of nowhere, said everything we believe in, just a little louder, a little more, social media savvy. But, the question is there any there? And, Vivek could at least run a mutual fund, and run a successful company. I just don't think there's any reason to believe that he's ready to step into the role of governor any more than the lieutenant governor or Byron Donalds. I mean, I've had voters come up and I said, why are you here at this event? Well, I've been looking at the candidates, and you're actually the only one that's qualified. Had the president picked someone that I thought was qualified to actually be our governor, I might be supporting them. But that's the blessing of that endorsement, is I happen to be the only one truly that has got the qualifications to go in and pick up where Ron DeSantis is leaving off. Those are big shoes to fill, but I can fill them. How
much money have you been able to raise so far?
We're between 7 and 8 million, I think, right now, which sounds like a lot of money. In Florida, it's not. It's enough to get our message out. But not nearly enough to, smother people with it 5, 6, 7 times that a lot of people say a lot of voters need, to hear it and hear it and hear it again. But we're continuing to sprint to the finish line. and shows like yours, and we're doing radio shows, as I mentioned, in English, Spanish. I don't speak any other languages, but we're trying to reach voters everywhere they are. And here we're in Miami today. We'll be back in Central Florida. We did a panhandle run and hit a lot of little map dots that we're trying to reach people where they are. We've been to all 67 counties in Florida. That's how you win on the grassroots. And so we're doing that with a combination of other things like mail and advertising and text messages, you name it.
I've watched Byron Donalds' television ad. It feels to me, and maybe this is just me, I don't know, but it reinforces for me what you and I have been talking about and his lack of a CV. I mean, being able to shoot a three-pointer, to me, is not qualifications to be governor of Florida. So I'm not sure who he's trying to reach or what the thought process was behind that, but it just left me feeling very empty. And I'm not trying to be mean or biased, but I'm just being honest about the way it comes across to me.
Well, I think you've hit on the core reason why Donalds doesn't make any sense and voters should reject him is he can't answer the why question. I have. Why me, not the others? He doesn't have an answer. That's why he's shooting baskets on TV. That's why he won't show up for debates, because if he were confronted side by side with me, he has no shot. When voters that know me and hear him come overwhelmingly to us. We win the informed voter. It's the uninformed voter that he's hoping to just, people will shrug their shoulders and say, I guess I'm voting for Byron Donalds. That's not a very good reason just because you've heard his name. And you've pointed out exactly the problem is he's got no answer to the why question. Why you? Why should you be governor? Why do you want to run for governor? These basic questions that every voter wants and deserves an answer to. I have an answer, and it's a good answer. It's a compelling answer. He has none.
So you don't like the H-1B visa?
Well, no, as governor, I'm not going to allow them in state contracts or at state employment. I think it's been abused because I have heard too many stories of Americans that, train a couple guys and then they just get fired and they get replaced by those guys they trained. We need to make sure that our immigration system works for us. There's a right way and wrong way to do it. But everything I've heard, I am hearing multiple instances of abuse. There may be legitimate uses for it, but here as governor of Florida, putting Florida first, I want to make sure kids coming out of college have a job and their jobs aren't being replaced by people that don't belong here, or in the case of H-1Bs, that they're coming over and replacing Florida residents in those jobs. And so I want to make sure we protect our citizens and encourage them to get those high-paying jobs that will solve the affordability problem.
Well, maybe rather than doing away with it, you could figure out a way to reform it. I don't think Elon Musk would be very, very happy to hear what you've just said.
Yeah, I can't reform it. Obviously, the federal government will decide whether we do or don't have those, or how to. I think it needs reform. I would encourage reform where.
Well, but you said you were going to eliminate them from state contracts and make it tough for people in Florida.
Yeah.
I
can't. I got to just choose what they offer me, in terms of visas. But I want to make sure we're not letting, whether it's, in that case, a legal immigrant, they're here illegally on a visa, but nonetheless, if they're undercutting Florida workers, that concerns me. I want to make sure we're protecting Floridians and their jobs.
Well, it's concerning to me and kind of interesting that President Trump got elected primarily. I think the number one issue would have been immigration. And paradoxically, it may be the very thing that causes us the most heartburn in the midterms, because people don't like the way that the deportation is being conducted. It's messy. It's violent. People are losing their lives. And then you've got that little factoid down in the Everglades called Alligator Alcatraz, which is kind of repugnant to me, actually. I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
Well, I was asked the question, and what I said is I would do whatever we needed to do to surge capacity, but I'd do it better, faster, cheaper. I'm not sure Alligator Alcatraz was any of those things. We have Camp Blanding, for example, which is a large National Guard facility in my neck of the woods. That was ready to go, could have been used immediately with capacity at very little cost to the taxpayers. And so, I don't have whatever information the governor had or his thought process in putting it where he put it. And now it's closing, but I would have done things, better, faster, cheaper to provide if we needed that surge capacity to provide it, not necessarily create a new place with a new name and we got to be careful about making it a photo op. I'm all about getting things done. That's not sexy, but you want a governor who's not out there, trying to be a celebrity. You're trying, like Myron Donalds sees himself as a celebrity. He really does. And so that's not somebody that's necessarily going to be good at governing. You want somebody who's going to do it right.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. And Paul Renner, it has been an honor and a very enjoyable half hour to be with you. And I really appreciate your coming on The Truth. I wish you well. And we will continue to follow the Florida governor's race. And that is The Truth.
Thank you, John.